Hello. Thank you for listening wherever you are. I hope you're having a good day. My name is Bron Hogan, and this is my podcast, Travel With Us a While, where I have conversations with travelers by land, sea, air, and beyond. Today, my guest is Tim Dobson. He comes from Manchester in the United Kingdom. He's a hiker, a climber, a caver, and a paddler. And he shared with me that when he first started walking, he was the slowest in the group. His story that was shared on Facebook reminded me of when I was much, much younger and a member of the Trails Club of South Africa. I used to be the one that had to stay at the back and ensure everybody was safe, and it used to annoy me because they were having a lovely time, and when they got caught up with all the rest at the top, everybody just walked away because they'd had enough rest, and the poor people that had been struggling didn't really get much time to rest. Anyway, Tim has a similar story to share with us, and welcome, Tim. Over to you, please.
My name's Tim, and I actually kind of want to start with a story that happened a little bit before that adventure
I
on
would
Ben
love that.
Lawes.
I would love that. Lovely.
But I'm going to circle back to that in a minute because I'd love to revisit it. A few years after that adventure, me and my friend were keen to learn a little bit more about rock climbing and climbing outside. And we went on a trip with a organised group, one that we'd never been out with before, never heard of before. And we didn't know what to expect, but we kind of went along. And when we arrived there, we discovered that everybody else had paired themselves up, and it was just up to me and my friend to go hiking with each other. And that was a bit disappointing because we'd been, looking forward to learning something new, going rock climbing, going out in the great outdoors. So that was a bit surprising, a bit disappointing. And so we went and kind of did the only thing we really knew how to do, and came back to the hut and discovered that everybody else was back at the hut already, 10 other men and us. And we were sitting there, kind of minding our own business, and there was an ex-head of the group there, somebody who was kind of used to be the head of the group, and he was there with his clearly best friend. And the best friend said to him, and it was complete silence, so everybody could hear. It's just, remind me, when was it that women were allowed to become members of this group? And he goes, it was back when this hut was built. It was a condition from the council. And then the best friend follows up with, couldn't the women folk have got involved in other ways, making curtains and such like? And I was like, me and my friend just looked at each other and we were absolutely like, I cannot describe it. And to our shame, we didn't challenge it because it didn't felt like it was the atmosphere where newcomers challenging that sort of attitudes would be welcome. What we did do was never come back.
Excellent.
And when we came to set up a climbing group of our own, we kind of thought about that experience and we decided to do the exact opposite of it. And so the climbing group that I'm a part of, in a radical turn of events, welcomes women and is a very kind of diverse and friendly and welcoming place where none of that is a big deal and none of that conversation needs to happen. And it was really striking because it was one of those moments where you realise that you only need to take a relatively small number of steps to step right back into the 50s. And it was a really, really kind of powerful and kind of thoughtful experience, because just stepping back a few years, I'd learnt about I spent all of my teenage years playing around on computers and not doing any exercise. I have absolutely no regrets about that. But then the day I did have regrets about that was when I first went out and did a really big walk, a really big hike. And obviously, like the next day, I could tell. I remember, like, I actually kind of think that possibly my experience is different to many other people's. I remember having DOMS, like all of my muscles hurting for about a week afterwards. And I kind of
Wow.
assumed that everybody had this experience. And actually, I understand now that's not normal. And I'm delighted that nobody else has to go through, or relatively few people have to go through that. But it's kind of, if I was to say, well, the first real hill for anybody listening from the UK was Wainwright's
Ben,
Family Mountain, the
that
one
one.
in the Lake District on the side of Derwentwater. Everybody else is kind of thinking they know exactly which one, and I've just lost the name of it just like that. But that was kind of a relatively short walk. I went away from it absolutely destroyed. But I discovered that I really liked the experience. And although I'd been one of the slowest people on this walk, I decided actually the people who took me on this one, all of the people who I grew up hiking around, were all super welcoming, supportive and
Yes.
encouraging. And so I thought maybe I can go and do some more of this. And so that's when a few months later I found myself on a mountain called Ben Lawes in Scotland in the snow. Um, and walking uphill, and maybe a group of about six of us, and just feeling super aware that, for better or for worse, I was the slowest person there. And that wasn't kind of a, I'm not believing I'm going to make it. It's just,
No.
I'm aware that my lungs are killing me and my legs are killing me. And the only
Ah,
thing that you can do if those things are happening is to pause a little bit and step forward. Have a breather, or well, yeah, or take it really slowly. In practice, at that point, the only option really was to take it to have breathers. And I was incredibly lucky on that day and on many of the other days that came after it, and there were plenty of them, that the group whom I was hiking with was so supportive, so welcoming, and so happy to let me walk at the speed that I needed to. Because it was by doing those training walks, if you want to call them that, or getting in those initial kind of bit of a walk where you're not really that far up the kind of skill level, but you're progressing and you're getting the hours in. It was by doing that that it allowed me to progress on to, actually, over some years, realizing that I wasn't the slowest person in every group. Maybe I was the second slowest person. And so I used to walk at the back with the person who was the slowest, following them up the hill, going, you can do this. It's absolutely normal for you to find this bit hard work. Yes, I hate uphills too. And maybe I'm realizing that I'm not panting as much as they are at this point, but that's okay.
full wins.
And yeah, and over time, realizing that actually some of the people whom I'd been watching leading these groups, kind of thinking maybe I could do that just as well as they're doing, or maybe a bit better.
Wow.
And so after kind of, not choosing not to lead things for what felt like forever, I said, actually, okay, I will lead some of these hikes. I can do this. And I found that experience of being one of the slowest people in the group very, very helpful when I started leading these groups, because it was very, very easy to think about what the people nearer the back of the group needed, when I,
Yes.
just a couple of years ago, I was that person right at the back, and I could go, okay, how can we make this whole experience as least traumatic for them as possible? And look, we want to do this together. We're a team. We're all going to kind of do this together, but is there anything that we can all do to make life easy for them? Some of that is about pace. But also, I remember vividly trying to walk down this very steep hill. I'd brought a hiking pole, or some hiking poles, with me, and I ended up giving them to this person who was really struggling with the descent, because I just thought, at this speed, I don't need them. If we
Yes.
can get a tiny bit faster and help this person feel a little bit better, here you go. And, at least that made them feel slightly better about themselves. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that people don't. I've made loads of map reading errors. People don't remember those. I've been on walks where we've made map reading errors and people haven't noticed. What people remember is how you made them feel.
So
If if you can lean into that, and if you can kind of think about what you can do to support that, then people will come away from that with such a better experience and be more keen to do more things around you.
we're totally in accord on that point. Absolutely, yes. And
Uh,
so you started your special group that you go regularly with now. Tell me a bit more about what sort of things you do with them.
Yeah, so along the way, we started our own climbing club, because it felt like some of the things that I've been talking about didn't really exist in rock climbing, at least at the time, or local to us. And we also kind of went on to create our own caving club, which is probably where
Wow.
my like strongest focuses are today. But I think that, as much as I'm very proud of them, and I feel like I'll name check them both, the climbing clan and the caving crew,
Yes.
I don't think that they're a great topic of conversation. I think that it would be more interesting to talk about some of the times when perhaps I've been out in the mountains and hiking and
Absolutely.
things
Yes.
haven't quite gone to plan.
I love stories.
Because, yes, because I think these are the kind of stories that I always enjoy sitting around a fire and telling people, hopefully so that they can learn things from. So let me dive straight in. I mean, I'm just pulling one right out of at random. So there was this one time we were descending a mountain in Scotland, and it was a big snowy mountain, not one that I'm familiar with. And I would be very keen to underline that I was not leading this group, and these are not the decisions that I would have made. And Yeah, so we're walking down this snowy gully, and I was kind of quite far at the back, possibly because I was slow. I think at this point I was just taking photos, or I'd kind of really enjoyed the view on the descent. So I was far away at the back, and I watched some of the group ahead of me being shown by the leader of this group how to descend this final bit into the bottom of the valley. And the decision that he made that I find quite hard to defend was to get everybody to essentially ice axe a rest down this piece of snow that he felt perhaps there wasn't a safer way of descending, which would have worked brilliantly if it hadn't been for one of the people at some point, about halfway down, flipping off from their tummy onto their bottom and rapidly accelerating really, 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 really fast, really quickly.
My
And the thing
goodness.
is that when you start accelerating really quickly, there's very little that you can do to stop. And I was watching there from like very far high up, 100 meters above, completely powerless to do anything. And I watched her fly into a rock. And I was like, oh, that's bad. And of course, there's nothing that I can do now for 10 minutes whilst I try and descend to where they've got to. And just for anybody kind of wondering, the safe way to descend that sort of terrain is just to sort of sidestep holding your ice axe, wearing your crampons, which we were all doing. So it really didn't make sense.
Yes.
Well, mercifully,
Yes.
when I got there, she was okay. She was walking, she was talking. Her lunchbox had been destroyed, which all things considered is, I mean, she'd eaten her
Minimal.
lunch as well, so it wasn't even that she'd missed out on lunch. But yeah, one broken lunchbox and a few sort of light scratches on her tummy seemed to be all that she'd got away with. But I mean, look, that's kind of a story of somebody making a spectacularly poor decision. Somebody else. How about we jump to a story of me making some decisions? Perhaps I should,
Like that.
yeah, maybe don't look back on so so happily. So a few years, I don't know, around about the same time. This isn't going to cast me on a very good light, I'm afraid.
Truth is good.
We'd been planning to go camping and hiking in
It's good.
Scotland, and apparently a storm was coming. And I was like, well, it's wind and rain, everyone. We should just go anyway. And they were like, no. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going anyway. You can, you all are, I'm not sure what a word you would use, but some people who are not very hardy. You are not good people. You are not strong people. This was not a sensible thing to say in hindsight. So off I went, and I made use of the bus network. So I arrived at my destination with about 2 hours sleep. And set off up the mountains. And when I got to the top of the first mountain, it had sort of started raining. So I put on my waterproofs and walked on towards the second mountain. And as I was walking there, the rain really set in. And like
So
anyone who knows anything about waterproofs knows that waterproofs kind of buy you time. They aren't a dry suit. You're not going to be perfectly dry. You are just buying yourself time until you are completely soaked. And before I got to the top of the second mountain, I was completely soaked. And I was very aware that I was getting cold and wet because it was windy. There was not very good there was bad visibility. I was carrying a big rucksack, and I was kind of starting to realize I was struggling.
scary.
It was starting to feel a bit scary. So I was like, okay, I want to get the navigation off this last mountain perfect, because I need to get down to the campsite or the col where I'm going to put my tent, the place where I've thought a good place to camp, and pitch my tent and get warm and get dry-ish. Well, so I took my compass bearing and I started walking down the hill. And after quite a while, I kind of wondered where is, like, this isn't what I'm expecting. But I kept walking because I'm like, well, look, there's no point kind of stopping. You just need to keep walking. It's you're going to be there. And I was walking past all of these boulders that were kind of strewn near the path, and I kept kind of, at this point I was really cold, and I started to think that these boulders might be people walking up towards me, maybe to come and help me. And I started to consider, if it would be the right kind of time to call search and rescue. And eventually I sort of sat down and looked at my compass and map, and I realised that I was walking down the wrong side of the mountain.
My.
What's more, I realised that I was probably some way Yeah, I realized I was probably some way already down the wrong side of the mountain. And the idea of walking back up when I felt so cold and where it was more windy and more wet and more energy didn't seem like a great idea. But then the way that I was walking seemed to be leading straight to the edge of a big cliff. So that wasn't good either. But at least that I'd caught it. At least I'd noticed at this point. So what I probably wisely decided to do was to alter my walk slightly and continue walking down the hill and drop into the valley, which was further than I'd meant to descend, and pitch my tent. And thankfully, that was something I was able to do. I did consider the idea of calling search and rescue or mountain rescue or whatever you want to call it, and I realised that not only did I not have any mobile signal, but I would be thoroughly hypothermic even if I could get through to them.
Yes.
So I made the good decision to keep working on sorting myself out. And I got down to the valley floor and found a flattish piece of ground to put my tent on. And this is where I may have realised I'd made another mistake. You see, down sleeping bags are probably one of the best inventions in sleeping bags for a long time. They're very lightweight. They're very warm, they cuddle you brilliantly, unless they're wet, at which point they become about as useful as a wet tea towel.
I was
And
waiting for
for
that.
some reason, I had failed to put I always put my sleeping bag in a bin bag or a dry bag. On this occasion, I cannot kind of explain why I did not, but I didn't. And so my sleeping bag was about half wet. Thankfully, I had a silk sleeping bag liner, and so I crawled into the sleeping bag liner, I crawled into the sleeping bag, and very quickly fell fast asleep. And I did warm up, thankfully.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's actually, bizarrely, there's a part 2 to this story, but I just kind of want to pause here for a second and say that at no point did I make some good decisions along this pathway. I think the reason I'm happy to share this is hopefully to encourage other people to learn if they notice themselves making similar sorts of mistakes. It could be as simple as not putting their sleeping bag in a bin bag, whatever the weather. But
Yes.
there's some more subtle things here that I just think it might be worth pointing out.
Please do.
It's not always a bad idea to do different things to what your friends want to do, but
Yes.
committing yourself to a plan as publicly as I did is potentially a little bit unwise, because you may not notice it. You may think it's a great idea, but if I just said, I'm going up to Scotland anyway, I'll see what I'll do, that would have been, probably fine, because there wouldn't have been any of my ego stuck in that adventure that I was planning to have. But by literally saying, I'm planning to climb these mountains, it didn't really leave any room for me to decide afterwards that actually, perhaps a better plan might be to, I don't know, do a low-level walk and camp at a campsite, and looks like your sleeping bag isn't ideal. Okay, well, isn't it a good thing I made better decisions?
Yes.
Another kind of thing is that I probably should have turned around sooner, or made better decisions to not do some of that. That walking in that level of rain and wind was, weather forecasts exist for a reason, and I just brazenly presumed that they were, I don't know, pseudoscience, and spoiler, they're not. So look, I've learnt this mistake so that you don't have to. Maybe it seems obvious. Hopefully it does. But if it didn't, and somebody needs reminding, maybe this is one of those occasions. And then perhaps as a sort of navigation point, and actually after going on this trip, I chose to get a GPS device, as I'd had one or two more mistakes. Well, it wasn't quite a mistake with my compass bearing, but the problem was there was a important zigzag on my descent route that I'd missed, and when I'd got to the place where I should have turned sharp right or something, I just walked off the end of it. And I think that perhaps if I'd found it easier or better to do that navigation there, then yes, perhaps things would have gone a little bit better.
Hindsight is so useful.
Yeah, and look, I think that lots of people have had experiences like some of these, and I think when we talk about them, it's very, very powerful, because people are able to, share, actually, here's something that you shouldn't do. And it's much
Yes.
easier to agree with to hear your friend making a mistake. And, I'm not anyone's friend who's listening to this, but hopefully we can become friends.
Yes. Thank you.
And it's much easier to kind of hear those stories and go, right, that guy on that podcast, he said, like, the weather forecasts are real. And it's much easier to believe it when you hear what happens when you choose to kind of disregard them.
True.
Or perhaps why you need to take a compass bearing. If you're navigating just by compass and map and it is blowing horrible wind and rain, you still probably need to take those regular compass bearings.
Yes.
Just to check that you're on track. And if you're going out in horrible weather, you need to be doubly sure that all of your equipment is suitable for those conditions. All of this kind of seems obvious in hindsight, but I think when we share the stories that kind of underline why the obvious things are good rules, it makes it really much more powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. But I have one other thing that I was reading about in your book where you did reverse abseiling and taught the people
Uh,
the reverse. Oh, that was fascinating.
Yeah, well, you see, sometimes people find the notion of kind of abseiling a bit intimidating. So we have kind of thought, well, if you can just rebrand it to reverse abseiling, then people can start at the bottom and find their way to the top. And maybe if it's less intimidating, it'll work for some people. So this was just an idea we came up with a few days ago. And I mean, it's not a kind of well-developed thing. It's just something we came up with at the start of the month. But yeah,
Sounds
if it works
lovely.
for some people then and provides some entertainment, then all the better.
Yeah, and it gives them probably courage to go the other way.
Yeah, exactly.
And your caving, Tim, I'm just blown away by your caving. Before you talk, I share with you that I grew up in Africa and I used to go caving with my family and my late husband. And we never had any of the equipment we had. We just had a torch. No rescue burgers around either. So it was a different world then.
Of course. What I love about caving is that how much of a team sport it is. So
Yes.
just like going for a walk, and perhaps quite different to climbing or archery or
Yes.
uh, other types of sports, snooker. It's something that you do like with a group, and what maybe people who've never done it before will find is that the whole group is motivated and very, very supportive about helping everybody get through those obstacles.
Yes.
For me, that's sort of the mindset that comes with caving, that's probably forged through hardship and forged through tackling shared challenges,
Yes.
is one of the things that I find really draws me to it. I used to think that I didn't enjoy the actual activity of it. I used to think that I just enjoyed that mindset and the people who came with that. And then I discovered that the groups whom I went caving with had a tendency to drop people in at the very, very far deep end. And I discovered that just like you don't teach people to drive in a Formula One car, or, you don't learn to swim right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, it's entirely possible to introduce people to caving in a very pleasant, gentle way in large open spaces where your stories of how you went caving with your family in South Africa make complete sense, because all of the things that people are very, very fearful of are actually not really a thing. And I think that
Yes.
but if I wanted people to take away one thing about caving, I think that it's usually, it would be like often kind of caving sort of stereotypes by tight spaces, but that would be like stereotyping all cooking as being flambe. It just isn't real. Obviously, flambe is part of cooking, and obviously squeezes exist in caving, but they don't need to. You can cook your entire life without doing flambe, and you can go caving for an entire lifetime without doing it. The only thing that it does appear to be is that if you are a caving YouTuber, you are required to post like only squeezes. And I don't really follow cooking, but I have a suspicion that the same might apply to anyone who does flambe, that they just can't stop putting it on YouTube. My kind of suggestion to anybody wondering, should I try this, is don't watch YouTube, don't watch TikTok, ignore the social media, give it a go in a scenario with a group or people who are, able to support you in a supportive and welcoming way, and you may surprise yourself.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that when I grew up, there wasn't TikTok and Facebook and Insta, because we would go. All the best caves I went were in the Namib Desert in Namibia, where there were stalagmites that pulled on from the top, but they were all curly, and it was just mind blowing. But I'm not a South African, I'm a Zimbabwean, just for the record.
Of course, my apologies.
No, everybody,
I have some good friends who grew up in Zim and
yeah,
who actually babysit for my son, and yeah, um,
they're good people.
they're the best.
Yeah, but I was fortunate. I was able to. I lived in Botswana, Mozambique, and not I didn't live there, but I explored there, and Namibia a lot, and all over Southern Africa. And we just wherever there was anything interesting to go to, we would go. It was wonderful.
So that's so lovely to hear.
So, Tim, I also, because I've been reading all your posts once I discovered you, you told about a lovely lady called Judith and Tim, who did a spoof caving video in their house during COVID. That's absolutely delightful. Would you share that, please?
Yeah. Okay. So Judith is my mum. And I think at this point, my mum is rapidly becoming, despite my best efforts, my mum is rapidly becoming a national treasure in my cluster of friends. And I do say, despite my best efforts, because look, my mum was never supposed to get into any of the sports that I'm interested in. My mum has definitely played a role in founding and helping the climbing clan and the caving crew to flourish. And, she deserves all the credit that she can get. Now I've said that, I can start with the real abuse, which is that, yeah, she was never supposed to get involved in any of this. People sometimes ask me, how do you get your mum into climbing or into caving? And look, I didn't want her to get into any of that stuff. I wanted her to leave it all to her wonderfully modest and wise son, who never makes navigation decisions, poor decisions. But what she actually did was say, Tim, can I come? Can I have a go? The problem is that I couldn't say no. And then once my friends started enjoying doing the activities with her, she properly had her teeth in and wouldn't let go. So, I mean, I'll come to the video that you're talking about, but bizarrely, my mum has now done 190 caving trips since October 2021, and she will currently be 76 years old and will have started caving in 2020, which is absolutely, yes. There's no
Fantastic.
words.
Fantastic. Well, I'm 75, and my caving days are pretty much slowing down. I'm about to have a total knee reconstruction, but watch the space afterwards.
Yeah, well, bizarre. I mean, maybe not bizarre. No, not clearly completely in line with something. Her sister, who I think is 2 years younger, started caving with us around about the same time, but more infrequently. And she had a full hip replacement. And she actually found that caving was one activity that she could get involved with after her hip replacement that was a bit easier than what she expected. So she found that hill walking or hiking was quite hard on her hip because she had to use sticks and there was never anything to kind of steady yourself on. Whereas in caving, there's often kind of a piece of wall or rock or something that you could kind of lean against and put your hand on to steady you. And also sometimes you can just, caving is one of the only sports where you can sit down and have a rest and everybody kind of goes, yeah, totally normal. Stay as long as you want. There isn't often kind of the same time pressures or something somehow.
Yes.
So yeah, she's although she's nowhere near as prolific as my mum is, she's another slightly incongruous member of our group who is a complete asset to it and absolutely loves it. And I come from pedigree that means that when I'm getting on a little bit, I'm going to be taking up new sports and apparently doing them brilliantly. So I've all that to be afraid of because I don't know what sports that I will be. It's not going to be caving that will be my new sport. And yes, neither of these two have prior experience of caving before around about 2020 or 2019. So it's very, very, very strange. But just going back to, because you asked me about a specific video, um,
Just move
in
your mic
COVID,
away. Mic away. It's too loud.
back in COVID, my mum and me were locked down together. We couldn't go anywhere, and we just thought, well, why not try and make? There's lots of these kind of thought through films that are all take themselves very seriously, and I thought, well, why don't we try and do a film about caving that doesn't take ourselves very seriously? We've got all of this time, so we made a caving film about caving in my mum's house and just imagining different parts of my mum's house as parts of a cave.
Fabulous.
Look, I'm not going to give anyone any more spoilers. It's a minute and a half long. People who watch it
That's
apparently seem to enjoy it. So I
too
imagine
much.
that Bron's going to provide a link for you to watch it with. But even more bizarrely, we won an award. We won an award for it, which I was crying with. Like, we shot it and filmed it as a joke, just to wind up our friends with. And yes, entered it into this award scheme as a joke, because entering a silly film into a serious awards is brilliant. And then won an award, which made it even funnier. Listen, yes, that film has something that everyone probably needs to see once, and yes, there'll be a link somewhere that you can go
Absolutely.
find it from.
Fantastic. So, Tim, have you got any tips for new people wanting to get into climbing, perhaps, or caving? Wanting to get caving?
I think my best tip for anyone wanting to get into climbing or caving is to get involved through a group. So there will be different groups. In my part of the world, they're called clubs. In the USA, they're called grottos. I'm not familiar. I mean, I think anyway, there are groups. My
Yes.
advice would be to contact several groups. The keyword there was several. Some of them will be noticeably more welcoming when you mention that you're a beginner than other
Mm.
people. And you probably want to take those signals. Like, if you're getting the
Yes.
vibe, this is an old man's boys club, or this is an old man's club, then look, you take from that whatever is important to you. That might mean that you get loads of time with people and you listen to some of the things that they're saying and they teach you things. That might mean this isn't for you. But my kind of suggestion would be to reach out to a whole bunch of them and see who gets
Your
back to you, who seems most supportive. My kind of main suggestion would be to not assume that just because they're local or just because they're far away, that means that they're either ideal or not ideal for you. I think that you can find that there are groups who are quite far away from you geographically, and there's also this group right on your doorstep. It often can be that the group right on your doorstep is a kind of, this isn't the ideal group for you, and the one
yes.
far away is actually well worth committing that extra travel time to go and meet. Because look, if it means that the difference between you having a really good experience and like an absolutely traumatic experience, particularly for your first few times doing
Yes.
anything, you're going to really appreciate the difference there.
Mm.
And my climbing and caving groups are very lucky because we have people coming from different parts of the country, because realistically there aren't that many supportive groups that are that close to them. And
Yes.
if they travel, and yes, the travel time is unfortunate, but the travel time to not to
Have
go kind
fun.
of somewhere else but be somewhere closer by, but then be assumed to be really, really good at something or be dropped in right at the deep end, that isn't worth it to them.
No.
So that's my main tip. They established groups, wherever they are, they will be places that will teach you the important safety things. I'm not going to give you like key safety
Oh, no, of
tips.
course not.
Like listen to what they tell you. If the experienced person says wear a helmet, which by the way is a great tip, then maybe wear a helmet. But listen, what they say and what's relevant to that area and that region, that's probably the best way to learn those things, is from some kind of established group.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Tim, we haven't even touched on your kayaking, paddling. Yeah. So paddling. A little snippet about that for us, please.
Oh, sure. Listen, kayaking is my weakest sport. It's a sport that I'm least competent at. It's one that I enjoy the most, And yes, one that I'm the biggest liability myself at. It's probably the only one that I would say that I'm not able. Whitewater kayaking is generally particularly dangerous, if I'm completely honest. I think
Yes.
it's way more dangerous than rock climbing, walking, or caving, despite what people's perceptions might say. Um, and it's the only sport that I don't feel I'm not competent enough to lead people to do yet.
Yet. Yes.
But I absolutely love
Yes.
it. Yes, and maybe at some point I will be, but of all the priorities that I'm juggling right now, that's probably relatively low down.
Thank
Yeah,
you
look,
so much.
I could talk about it kind of at length, but I think that's probably a decent amount of kayaking chat.
That's all right. We've had a lovely chat, and perhaps I'll get you back sometime. Tim, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me. And
You're
so, if you
absolutely welcome, Bron. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for your company and joining us on this podcast. If you'd like to find the link to look at Tim's mum's great video that won an award, it'll be on my blog. And there will be some photos and images that will also be on the blog and links to Tim's Facebook page. And in case you couldn't find the blog, it's bronhogan.com, and you should be able to find his story there. Thanks so much. Until next time. Bye.